We moved into the house on Sycamore Lane just after Christmas. The snow was thick and silent, muffling everything with a hush I'd once found peaceful. It was the kind of silence that felt holy until it wasn't. My wife, Mara, had fallen in love with the place instantly. "It has character," she'd said during the viewing, brushing her fingers across the intricate molding on the stairway, admiring the arched door frames and warped hardwood floors. The realtor had smiled, eager to pass off the creaking as charm. I was hesitant, but the price was too good to argue. 3 stories, a finished basement, a guest room facing the backyard, with windows tall enough to frame the entire woods. We moved in on a Tuesday. By Friday, I noticed a curtain. Let me be clear, there was nothing obviously strange about it at first. It was a standard blackout curtain, tall, a dull navy blue, and it hung on a rusted brass rod in the guest room. The previous owners had left it behind, and we hadn't gotten around to replacing it yet. The room was rarely used anyway, mostly holding boxes we hadn't unpacked and the spare mattress for when Mara's sister visited. That night, though, I passed the room on my way to the laundry. The door was open, and something about the curtain drew my eye. It looked wrong, not just in the way it sagged, but in how it moved. The window wasn't open. Neither was the vent. Yet the curtain was swaying just a little, a subtle, almost imperceptible motion like someone was standing behind it, shifting their weight from foot to foot. The sway didn't match the rhythm of any breeze or draft. It was too purposeful, too human. I stopped, watched it, even stepped closer. Then the motion stopped, completely still. I stared, half expecting to see the fabric bulge from some hidden shape underneath. But there was nothing, just the curtain, hanging loose. I chuckled at myself, chalking it up to exhaustion or paranoia. It had been a long week of moving, lifting, unpacking. I was sore and sleep-deprived. Shadows played tricks. Still, something about that room stayed with me the rest of the night. Even with the door closed, I could feel it, like the curtain had taken notice of me. The next day, Mara asked if I'd gone into the guest room late at night. "No," I said, pouring coffee. "Why?" She frowned. I could have sworn I heard something, like footsteps, not loud, soft, like pacing. I froze mid-sip. "You sure it wasn't the wind?" She shook her head. "There's no wind at 3 a.m., and it was rhythmic, like someone walking back and forth." I didn't say anything. I didn't want to spook her over something I'd probably imagined. Still, the next night, I placed my phone on the guest room dresser and hit record before going to bed. When I checked the recording the next morning, most of it was silence. But at 3:12 a.m., I heard it shifting fabric. Footsteps, a soft breath, and then a voice, whispered, almost too quiet to catch. He saw me. I deleted the file immediately. I wanted to ignore it. Blame old pipes, house settling, anything else. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the curtain was aware. Not haunted in the Hollywood sense. No sudden bangs or ghostly screams. Just present, watching, waiting. It started moving more often, always subtly, always when I was alone. I tested the air currents, placed a candle by the window to check for a breeze. Nothing. Then one morning I found the curtain twisted, knotted, as if gripped by 2 unseen hands and wrung tightly around something that had since slipped away. I told Mara we should redecorate. "That curtain's ugly anyway," I said. "Let's replace it." She agreed. The next day, we picked out a new one, something light, white with a gentle floral pattern. Nothing that could be mistaken for a silhouette or a figure lurking in the dark. But when I went to remove the old curtain, I couldn't. The rod was bolted into the wall. Not screwed, bolted. Thick, industrial bolts that had been painted over at least 3 times. I fetched my tools. I tried drills, screwdrivers, even a crowbar. Nothing moved. That night, I dreamed of the guest room. Except it was empty. No boxes, no matris. Just the curtain drawn across the tall window and someone standing behind it. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I watched as the shape behind the curtain slowly lifted one hand, pressing it against the fabric, and I realized it was on the inside of the curtain, not the window. I woke up gasping, sweat-soaked. The hallway light flickered as I got up to check the guest room. The door was open. We always kept it closed. The curtain was swaying again. That weekend, Mara's sister came to visit. She stayed in the guest room. I didn't tell her about the curtain. She left the next morning before sunrise. Wouldn't say why. Just packed her things in silence, eyes wide, face pale. Mara asked what happened, but her sister wouldn't answer. She avoided our calls after that. Stopped replying to texts. 3 days later, we got a letter. No return address. It just said, "You need to leave that room empty. Don't sleep there. Don't watch it. And whatever you do, never touch the curtain." More things happened after that. I'll write them all down, I promise. But this was the beginning. This was when I realized it wasn't just a curtain. It was a skin. It was a veil. And something alive was underneath it, still breathing, still watching. And somehow, it had started watching me. I didn't sleep much after Mara's sister left. It wasn't just the unease of the guest room anymore. It was something else, a tension in the house, a static that clung to my skin, that crackled in the corners of the hallways like someone had just turned off a radio. I couldn't ignore the guest room any longer. Something was in there, something that watched us, even with the door closed. So I set up a camera. Not a fancy one, just a second-hand indoor cam I bought off Craigslist, one I could monitor from my phone. I mounted it discreetly in the upper corner of the guest room, facing the curtain. Every night for a week, I watched, and every night it moved, not wildly, not violently, just shifted, as if someone was taking slow, controlled steps behind it, one after the other. Sometimes I'd catch the curtain's edge flutter inward, like a breath had passed from the room into the fabric. Once I watched in real time as the entire curtain bowed outward, not inward, as if something was pressing through it, trying to escape into the room. I showed none of it to Mara. I couldn't. She still believed it was an old house with old noises and colder corners. I was afraid of what might happen if I admitted the truth aloud. But that silence only made things worse. One night I woke up gasping. I dreamed of the curtain again. This time it hadn't just swayed. It had split down the middle. And behind it wasn't the window, it was a hallway. One that stretched far beyond the wall. Narrow, claustrophobic, lined with dozens of curtains, all gently breathing. I stood there in the dream, too terrified to move, until I heard it. Shuffling footsteps from the other end of that impossible hallway. Something was coming. I woke drenched in sweat, the sheets kicked off. Mara was still asleep beside me, breathing evenly. I sat up, trying to calm my pulse. Then I heard it. Soft footfalls. Upstairs. The guest room. I crept out of bed, careful not to wake her, and climbed the stairs with my heart pounding. The air felt wrong up there, thick like I was walking through gauze. The door was open again. I took a shaky breath and peered inside. The curtain was still. No motion. No wind. Nothing. I almost turned around, almost walked away. But then I saw the footprint. A bare footprint on the wooden floor. Small. Human. Leading out from behind the curtain. And another one beside it. Two sets of prints. Coming out from the curtain. But none going back. I stayed home from work the next day and went through the camera footage again. I watched the timestamp for the hour I'd had the dream. Nothing moved for a while. Then the screen glitched just for a second, a white static smear across the image. When the feed returned, the curtain was drawn open. The window was gone. Gone. Instead, the camera captured a wall of fabric. Curtains, dozens of them, extending into a long corridor. And something emerging from the center. Crawling. Not walking. Not human. I yanked the power from the camera. I deleted the app. I smashed the camera to pieces with a hammer in the backyard. I buried it under the frostbitten soil and stood there for a long time, feeling stupid and afraid and painfully aware that something had noticed me back. That evening, Mara came into the kitchen pale and quiet. You didn't move anything in the guest room, right? I swallowed. No. Why? She reached into her pocket and handed me something. A fingernail. Broken. Dirty. Still stained at the edges with something dark and dry. I found this under the curtain, she whispered. My blood ran cold. Things escalated after that. We started hearing whispers through the vent that led to the guest room. Not full words, just fragmented sounds, like syllables trying to form language. Sometimes it sounded like a name, sometimes like gasping, sometimes like pleading. Then Mara started having nightmares, too. She didn't tell me at first, but I knew. I'd wake up to find her sitting up in bed, staring into the dark hallway. When I asked what was wrong, she'd just say, I thought I heard something. But one night, she couldn't hold it in. She told me about the dream. She was standing in front of the curtain, alone in the guest room. Except it wasn't hanging from the rod anymore. It was suspended in the air, floating. It hovered between her and the window, forming the shape of a person, shoulders to feet, but with no face. And it was breathing, heavy, labored, desperate. And it whispered, let me wear you. I wanted to burn the damn thing, rip it down, and light it on fire in the backyard. But every time I touched it, my skin burned, like static shock, but worse, searing, as if something was retaliating. I started sleeping downstairs on the couch. Mara joined me soon after. We shut the guest room door, blocked it with furniture. But that wasn't enough. The curtain started moving the furniture. Every morning we'd find the door slightly open. The chair used to brace it, shifted 2 inches, then 3, then toppled completely. And one morning on the guest room mirror, written in soot, I need more space. We called in a contractor to evaluate the window in the guest room. My excuse for getting someone else to look at the curtain, maybe even take it down. He was a local guy, middle-aged, no nonsense. He went in alone. 10 minutes later, he came out, pale and shaking. He refused to go back in. Said there was mold. Said we needed to call a specialist. Gave me a number, wouldn't explain, and left in a hurry. That night, I called the number. An older woman answered. She never gave her name. Well, I told her the address. There was silence. Then she said, you live in a house with a curtain. Don't look behind it. Don't open it. And don't let it learn your name. I didn't know what that meant. But I know now. Because that next night I heard it. From the guest room. Breathing. Shallow. Panicked. And a voice whispering, Daniel. My name. It said my name. It had learned me. And that was only the beginning. The couch. Her face twitched occasionally, as if even her dreams were trying to pull her awake. I kept expecting the door to the guest room to creak open. It never did, but I heard it, breathing, all night. Not human breathing, something dry and hollow, like the inhale of something long dead, trying to remember what lungs felt like. And it said my name again, soft, crooked, smiling, almost like it was savoring the syllables. Daniel. I hadn't said my name aloud near the guest room. I was careful, so careful, but it knew. And when something like that knows your name, it owns something of you. The next morning, Mara didn't remember much of the night. She remembered going to sleep, maybe waking up for a second, and that was it. But there was something wrong with her. I noticed it immediately, the way she stood a little too still when she poured coffee, how she turned her head too slowly, how her eyes flicked to the ceiling, to the walls, like she was following a noise no one else could hear. She kept rubbing her temples, kept saying it felt like a balloon was inflating in her skull, that the air in the house was too thick. She was getting sick. I could see it in her skin, paler, almost gray, and her hands, always cold. When I took them, they felt like they'd been in the freezer. She told me not to worry. But that night, I caught her standing in front of the guest room door. The chair we used to brace it moved. Door cracked open just slightly. She didn't move when I called her name. When I touched her shoulder, she turned, startled like she didn't recognize me. She didn't remember getting up, didn't remember going upstairs. And she swore that she'd been dreaming of the fabric, of being wrapped in it, cradled, held, whispered to. I started hearing the curtain whispering to me while I was outside the house. I'd be driving, walking, at the store, and somewhere in the ambient noise, between engine hums and distant conversations, I'd hear it, like someone right behind me, breathing against the back of my neck. Let me stretch. Or worse, you don't need her anymore. I tried sleeping in the car one night, parked outside our house with the windows up. I left all the lights in the house on and told Mara to call me if anything happened. At 2:13 a.m., she texted me one word, help. I sprinted up the front porch and into the house. The lights were out. The house was silent. No breathing. Just thickness. That same thick air again. Like syrup. I found Mara in the kitchen, curled in the corner on the floor, sobbing. She wouldn't look at me. Just kept whispering something. Over and over. It's not a curtain anymore. After calming her down, she finally told me what happened. She'd gone upstairs. She didn't remember why. Maybe she heard something. Maybe the curtain called her. She opened the guest room door. And inside, it was no longer a normal room. The walls were draped in fabric. Not hung, not pinned, grown. Like the room was becoming a cocoon. The curtain now pulsed. Not swayed, pulsed. Like a heart. Like it was alive. And worse, when she got too close, she swore it reached for her. A fold of the curtain unfurled like a limb, brushed her cheek, and whispered, "She'll make a better fit." We left the house that night. Checked into a motel 3 towns over. I didn't care what we had to spend. I didn't care about jobs, about mail, about anything. We just needed to not be there. But the curtain didn't care where we went. The motel room was tiny, barely clean, with buzzing overhead lights and a cracked mirror. At 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of something dragging across the floor. I looked up, and the curtain over the tiny window was swaying. There was no vent, no wind. I pulled Mara out of bed. She was burning with fever, whispering again. I saw its face. I checked out immediately. Drove 6 hours straight to my parents' place in another state. They weren't home. They were on vacation, and I had a key. It was quiet there. No curtains in the guest bedroom. I made sure of it. For 2 days, things were fine, until I want to take a shower. I pulled back the curtain around the bathtub and froze. There was a handprint pressed into the outside of the fabric. 5 long fingers, upside down, as if someone was clinging to the ceiling above it. I turned. Nothing was there, but on the fogged-up bathroom mirror, words were scrawled in the steam. Your skin fits too loose. I confronted Mara that night. Told her we needed help. Real help. She didn't answer. She just stared out the window of the guest room, the one without a curtain. I followed her gaze. Outside, across the lawn, past the garden fence, something stood beneath a tree, draped in fabric. A curtain, or someone wearing it like skin, loose and slumped. Arms far too long. Head tilted to the side like a curious animal. And as I stared back, the fabric tightened, took form, and behind it I swear I saw a face. Human eyes. My eyes. The next morning, Mara was gone. Her phone was still there. Her shoes. Hip ache. But the guest room window was open, and on the bed was a sheet of fabric. Smooth. Fresh. Almost new. There were faint impressions on it, like someone had laid down and never gotten back up. And across the ceiling, soot prints, like a person had walked upside down and vanished into the plaster. I'm not back home. I can't go back, but every room I stay in, the curtains breathe, and at night I hear it whisper to me, louder now, closer, let me in. You're already wearing me. I stopped staying in homes. Motels, cabins, rest stops didn't matter. Every curtain I encountered now twitched, breathed, or stared back. Even in public places, I'd see them, windows where the fabric bulged like lungs. Long, slow inhales, quick, twitching exhales, and sometimes, only sometimes, I'd glimpse the outline of a face pressing forward from behind the cloth as if it were trying to peel through. I started cutting them down. Every room I stayed in, the first thing I did was rip the curtains down and throw them out. But they always came back. New ones, replaced by staff or growing back in impossible ways. I began driving through the night, sleeping only in the front seat of my car. But the whispering followed. It happened in Wyoming. I'd stopped at a gas station outside of town that barely existed. The kind of place with one road in and one road out, where the only people who lived there had likely never left. The station was open. The man at the register was old, hunched, and staring at a radio that was just static. When I asked if there was a place to sleep nearby, he didn't answer immediately. He just turned to me with pale, clouded eyes and said, "Ain't no room safe from fabric, but you can park out back if you don't mind being watched." I told him I didn't plan to sleep long, just rest a bit. He smiled, but not kindly. Knowingly, that night I dreamed of Mara. She was naked but covered in curtain-like skin, draped loosely over her body like she'd been dipped in fabric. Her mouth was sewn shut, her eyes sewn open. She stood motionless in a white room made of curtains. Walls, floor, ceiling, all waving, all breathing. She mouthed something at me, over and over. "It's not wearing us. We're wearing it." I woke up screaming, and in my car's back seat, a single piece of striped fabric, like the guest room curtain, was folded neatly, waiting. It was warm to the touch. The gas station man was gone the next morning. So was the radio. The whole station was closed, no trace of anyone ever being there. But behind the building, near the woods, I saw something nailed to a tree. A sheet, thin and stained, covered in soot and dust. Nailed through at the corners, like a makeshift warning sign. While I got close, I realized it wasn't just a sheet. It had pores, veins, and stitched along the bottom, in red thread, was a phrase, "Skin that breathes too long forgets its shape." I tried to get help. I reached out to a fringe paranormal researcher, someone I found through old online forums. She called herself Dr. Cora Howell, and she lived in Oregon. She didn't blink when I told her about the curtains. She just asked one question. "Has it whispered your real name yet?" That's when I knew she believed me. Cora's house was deep in the woods. She met me at the driveway with a camera and a pair of scissors, told me to strip down, stand still, and let her check my seams. She said there were things that wore you from the inside, things that nested in skin like a costume. The scissors never cut skin, only fabric. So she slid them gently across my back, neck, arms. When she was satisfied, she nodded. "You're still yourself." For now. Her house had no curtains, no fabric at all. Windows were boarded shut. Beds were mattresses on wood. Doors were heavy and solid. She told me about the phenomenon. She called them drapers. Not ghosts, not demons. More like parasites from another fold of reality. They don't live in our world. They just reach through the thin parts. Fabric's their doorway. The folds between here and there. I asked how they chose people. She looked at me and said, "They don't choose. They wait for someone lonely, someone grieving, someone frayed. They slip in where the mind is weakest." She handed me a Polaroid. It was old, faded, a photo of 3 people standing in front of a tall, white curtain. Only, none of them had faces. She said she'd seen a draper once. Only once. In 1998, she'd stayed in an abandoned nursing home to research a local haunting. There was a curtain drawn in one of the rooms, heavy, beige, sun-bleached. She remembered thinking it looked out of place. That night it moved, but not like a normal breeze. It moved like someone inside it was turning over. She waited, watched, didn't go near it, and at 3:13 a.m., it folded open. Out stepped nothing, just emptiness. But the fabric left behind? She said it was soaked. With what? She wouldn't say. She left the next morning and never went back. I stayed at her place for a week. It was quiet. The whispers stopped. But on the 7th night, the boards on the bedroom window had shifted. Just slightly. There was a sliver of moonlight. And in that moonlight, I saw something. A shadow, a tall, swaying figure, standing just behind the trees. Cora and I watched from inside. She was pale, shaking. "They found you," she whispered. "Or maybe you brought it with you." That night, she tried something dangerous, something ancient. She called it the bleeding fold ritual, a way to sever the link between the draper and the host. She chalked runes on the floor, lit black candles, and placed me in the center. She used scissors again, but this time she didn't cut skin. She cut the air around me, and something screamed, not from outside, from inside the room, from inside my mouth. The ritual failed. Cora vanished. No blood, no struggle, just one thing left behind. Her coat, draped across the table like it was waiting to be worn. And in the mirror across the room, I saw a face standing behind me. Not mine, not hers, but wearing both. Since then, I've been on the run again. But there's nowhere left to go. Every curtain moves. Every whisper knows my name. And the worst part? Sometimes I wake up and I'm not sure if I'm wearing clothes or if the clothes are wearing me. And every time I blink, the seams on my arms go a little deeper. I didn't mean to go back. After Cora vanished, no trace No sound, not even a creak in the floorboards. I ran until I couldn't breathe. My legs didn't stop moving for hours. Somewhere around mile 7, I threw up in a ditch and realized I was barefoot. Still had the coat she left behind, though. The coat that wasn't heavy with her scent or warmth, but with presence. That awful feeling you get when someone stands behind you too long without speaking. I should have burned it, but I couldn't. It wouldn't catch. I drove. Town to town. I threw away my phone. Paid only in cash. Slept during the day. Woke up at dusk. The whispers didn't stop. They grew clearer. Now they came from light fixtures, from power lines, from inside walls, and always, always the same tone. You wore it. Now it wears you. You wore it. Now it wears you. You wore it. It wasn't just me anymore. I started seeing others. Not just strangers, familiar people. My sister's eyes showed up in a hotel clerk's face. My old college roommate's voice answered from a convenience store worker's mouth. But their expressions didn't match. They looked stretched, draped, like someone had thrown a skin over a wrong-sized frame. In Idaho, I saw a boy I used to know, Jamie Roscoe, died in 3rd grade bike accident. Except there he was watching me from behind a frosted diner window. He waved. His sleeve twitched, and a pale hand slid out that wasn't his. It waved too, slower, like it was mocking him. I stopped checking into places, started breaking in instead. Abandoned cabins, for sale homes. One time, an old community center that still had plastic chairs stacked to the ceiling. I climbed into the ceiling once too, because I realized the curtains couldn't get me if I was above them. But I was wrong, because even in the drop ceiling, the soot prints followed. One night, I woke up and the panels around me were stained, footprints, bare and black, as though someone had walked across the ceiling to find me. That's when I realized something. The prints were from the inside, not outside, not above me. The ceiling panels themselves had been folded from within. I returned to Cora's cabin 2 months after she disappeared. I shouldn't have, but I needed answers. Needed to know what finished the ritual. Because I could feel it now. The change. My fingertips were cold, even in heat. My skin had a coarse quality, like unwashed fabric. And sometimes when I pressed against my chest, I didn't feel bone or breath, just draping, hanging from within, sagging flesh that wasn't mine. Her house was still boarded up, but the trees were closer now. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean they had moved. The path I used to take was gone, and I swear the bark was peeling like old curtains, like they'd been skinned and hung. Inside, nothing had changed, except for one thing. Her mirror was broken, not shattered, unfolded. Imagine splitting a photograph into layers, like you peeled it into 2D slices. The mirror looked like that now, a hole in the wall that wasn't a hole, just a layered void. And behind that void, things moved. I should have left. I should have burned it down and salted the ground. Instead, I found her journal, and I read it. Her final entry wasn't written. It was stitched. She used thread, dark red, wove it through the pages with tiny puncture holes. The whole thing read like a warning stitched into skin. It's not that they wear us. It's that we stop resisting. The cloth wants a shape, so it learns yours, remembers it, and when it forgets your mind, it keeps your form. Forever. Hung on the inside of someone else. I didn't sleep that night, but something did. Something inside me. I felt it pressing against the back of my teeth, trying them out, like putting on a mask. The whispers are bolder now. They come through outlets, sometimes through the seams of my socks, And I've started seeing the soot prints not only on ceilings, but on people. Teachers, cashiers, children, their backs, their shoulders. One little girl had them up her neck, like someone walked down her from behind. I told her mother. She looked at me like I was insane, told me to leave. But when I passed them in the parking lot, the mother glanced at me again. And I saw it. Her shadow didn't move the way she did. It lagged. It trembled. It swayed. Even in windless air, I'm not sure how much longer I can hold it together. Some nights, I hear sewing sounds behind my eyes. Dini tet pulings gintai. Last week, I sneezed and something black fluttered out of my nose. A shred of fabric. It moved like it didn't want to be seen. I keep waking up facing the ceiling. Every time, the soot prints are closer. And now they're in pairs. 4 at a time. 6. 10. They aren't walking. They're climbing down. And I know where they're going. Me. I stopped sleeping. But I kept waking up. At first, I thought it was exhaustion, hallucinations from sleep deprivation. But the truth was simpler and far more horrifying. Something else was using my body to sleep. I closed my eyes for what I swore was a blink, just a flicker, and when they opened again, hours had passed. My arms would be covered in soot. My shoes were on the wrong feet. One time, I was in a completely different room from where I'd laid down, with blood on my teeth and a burned curtain pinned under my knee. I never remembered what I dreamed, but the curtains did. When I say curtains, I don't mean the fabric hanging in my window. Not anymore. I'm talking about what's behind them, the things that wear them like skin. The drapers. They don't walk. They don't breathe. They sag. They fold. Their bodies aren't so much shaped as draped into existence, as if someone whispered a suggestion of form into a hanging shroud and it listened. The soot isn't just dirt. It's a byproduct, like smoke from a fire, but colder. A trace left behind by something unnatural trying to press itself through. I found Cora's last hiding spot beneath the floorboards. Beneath a rug covered in scuff marks and faint blood smears, I discovered a small hatch with rusted hinges and a faded metal handle. Inside was a space barely large enough to curl into. A bed of dry leaves, 5 melted candles, scratch marks on the wood from the inside, and a pile of small bones wrapped in singed fabric. The curtain fabric. Her journal said, when the prints turn down the walls, it means the draper is trying to stand. I finally understood. They weren't just walking. They were learning. That night, the light bulb in my bathroom began to gasp. Not flicker. Not hum. Gasp. Short, dry, shallow inhalations like a dying man just behind the filament. I unscrewed it and dropped it in the sink. It was hot as breath. I replaced it. But later that night, the new one started. Same rhythm. Same pattern. Only this time, I heard my own name in between gasps. Matt. H-H-H-H-H. H-W-S-S-S-H-H-H-H-H. No one else was home. No radio. No wires. I even turned off the breaker. Still it gasped. Like it didn't need power. Just air. I started blacking out during the day. Once at a gas station. Once while driving. I woke up 10 miles away with the radio, playing a recorded loop of my own voice, whispering nonsense syllables. When I tried to speak, the sound came out backwards. Another time, I coughed up thread. A thin black filament 3 feet long. It was wet. Slick, but not with saliva, with ink. The kind used in old stamps or scrolls. I followed it with my eyes, and for a moment, I swear I saw it still writhing. Try to sew something, I did the unthinkable. I burned the cabin, soaked it in gasoline, watched it collapse in flames with the hatch still open, the soot prints disappearing in waves of fire and smoke. But something stepped out, not from the building, from a fire, a silhouette in the smoke. Not flame-proof, just unaffected. It didn't flinch, didn't burn. It folded as it walked, bending, sagging, adjusting. Like gravity didn't apply the same way. Like it was remembering how to move. I ran, but it followed. I reached out to others who'd encountered similar things. Online forum, Reddit, obscure message boards about mirror people and wrinkled shadows. One person responded. Their screen name was. They said, "If you see the soot prints begin to form circles, it's too late. That's the marking the place. They'll unfold fully. They need shape. They borrow yours. They'll keep borrowing until you're hollow. Don't let them in through the glass. Especially not the bathroom mirror. That's where they first remember faces." I smashed every mirror in my apartment, but I couldn't break the ones in my eyes. I began seeing things from the other side, not metaphorically, literally. Reflections would show me things I wasn't facing, things behind me that weren't there when I turned. Once the reflection in my laptop screen showed me lying in bed, except I wasn't. I was sitting upright, typing, but in the reflection, I was asleep, and my curtain was standing, not hanging, standing, as if someone inside it was pretending to be human, but not getting it quite right. The final straw came when my ceiling started to bow. Not sag, not crack, bow, downward, like weight was being applied from above, but there was no attic, no upstairs neighbor. Just an uninhabitable space that should have been empty. The soot prints that used to crawl across the ceiling now formed concentric rings. And in the middle, a pulsing bulge, like something too large to be seen all at once. I left, didn't pack, didn't close the door. But as I turned the corner of the street, every street light blinked out. And I heard the gasping. From every bulb, in unison. I'm writing this from a motel room 5 states away. But the curtain here just twitched. And I swear I didn't open the window. I hear footsteps above me, but this is the top floor. My arms are starting to go numb again. And just now, I looked at the ceiling. The soot prints aren't crawling anymore. They're waiting, and they're facing down toward me. My name is Matthew Carson. If you're reading this, it means I've failed. I've left what I can in writing because they don't like the written word. It has shape, boundaries. They hate that. I've recorded everything that's happened since I moved into that house on Ridgemore Road. The one with the rotten foundation, the black mold I mistook for soot, and the curtain that didn't hang. It waited. I don't know what I am anymore. But I'm not just Matthew. Not only. It started with faint marks on the ceiling. Barely there black smudges above my bed, like someone had walked barefoot across the plaster while I slept. At first, I thought I was imagining it, or maybe it was old water damage. But no, the soot moved. Over days, it formed footprints, then handprints, then something worse. Knees, elbows, a face, upside down, distorted, as though something had pressed its body flat against the ceiling, waiting for me to look up. It always looked like it was reaching, not falling, descending. I tried to leave, packed my things, rented a different apartment across the state. But it followed. Every place I went, soot came too. It wasn't physical, not always. Sometimes it came through mirrors or through cracks in wallpaper, or dreams I didn't know I was having. I'd wake up with a mouth full of ash, my hair knotted with thread, my voice hoarse like I'd been screaming inward. One time I found myself in a cheap motel bathtub with a curtain pulled tight around me. Tied shut. From the outside, let me tell you what I've learned. The drapers aren't ghosts. They're replications. Parasites that were human memory like fabric. They don't want to haunt you. They want to wear you. And the soot? It's the burnt-off residue of your identity. The ash left behind when they try you on. They start small. First, you hear footsteps at night. You see the curtains shift when there's no breeze. You convince yourself it's the house settling, a draft, your imagination. But they're not trying to fool you. They're trying to fit, like trying on a jacket made of soul. I thought I could kill it. I burned the original house, took the ash, and buried it far out in a woodland clearing near hemlock forest. A friend helped me dig a hole. We said prayers, burned sage, salted the perimeter. 3 days later, he was gone, left behind only his boots and his clothes standing upright like someone invisible was still wearing them. And beneath his shirt, inside the collar, was a tag made of skin with a word, worn printed in soot. The final transformation came last week. I blacked out again. This time, when I woke up, I was watching myself. Not a dream. Not astral projection. It was like I was folded into the walls, forced to observe through warped vision, like watching my life through wax paper. I saw myself walking, talking, but the movements were wrong. Twitchy. Too slow, then too fast. My arms hung. My legs moved with a marionette sway. I laughed, but the sound wasn't mine. It came from every light bulb. Gasping laughter, breathless, from above. The bulbs began to drip black wax. And I knew I wasn't in control anymore. I was being warned. Tonight is the last night. I can feel it tightening, the draper. It's closing around me like a cloak stitched for memories I didn't give it permission to touch. My voice trembles when I try to speak because it's not just me anymore. I'm sharing my breath with something ancient, something shapeless, but determined to take shape. A few hours ago, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Behind me, the curtain was still. Then it folded forward. It didn't move like fabric. It walked, but not with legs. More like a suggestion of movement made real. It wrapped around me. And for a moment, I looked so complete. Like I'd finally finished being human. If you find this story, please listen. Check your ceiling. Look for the soot. Watch the curtains. Never trust light that breathes. If you hear gasping from your light bulbs, if your mirror reflections hesitate longer than you do, if your dreams start ending with open curtains, then it's already begun. They've already chosen you. And the only thing they're waiting for is for you to stop resisting. Final audio recording, 3:03 a.m. Day corrupted. This isn't just a story. This is a wardrobe, and someone else is stepping inside. I fit now.